Hello students, now that you all have a very clear idea about an autobiography, you must have also very familiar with the autobiography of Mahatma Gandhi, which is titled as My Experiments with Truth. But have you heard about the autobiography of Jawaharlal Nehru? Can you please tell me what would be the title given to his autobiography? Can anyone guess? No? Let me give you a small piece from his or an extract from his autobiography. News of one of them got out. There were headlines in the press. Could you guess who's that? Surely of animals. Right. This is a famous quote from his autobiography, as I said, from Animals in Prison. It is an excerpt from his autobiography, which is titled Toward Freedom. In the prescribed prose piece, Nehru gives us a view of his life in prison and also of different experiences that he had with animals when he spent a couple of days, months and in jail as a political prisoner. In this essay, Nehru talks about his experiences with some animals in the prison, including the animals which he either feared or abhorred. Among them were snakes and centipedes, for which he had a particular dislike. Nevertheless, he had to put up with such animals quite a number of times. About snakes, Nehru says that though he was not overwhelmed by fear as most people were, and he did not find them particularly revolting, so they were not unwelcome, for he found in their visits a welcome diversion. But this did not seem to be the perception of the outside world, particularly of his fellow party workers. It so happened that once 3 or 4 snakes were found near Nehru's cell. At this thought, Nehru himself remained unperturbed. The news of the snakes being sighted leaked out, and the media picked up this bit of information and created quite a furore, giving it as a headline news the next day. Here, Nehru also hints at the sensationalization indulged in by the 4th pillar of democracy whenever it suited their purpose. I would like to give another quote. Worship and kindliness do not go after together. These lines are once again from the Animals in Prison. Nehru gives an insight into the Indian mindset regarding animals, drawing attention to the fact that Indians, especially the Hindus, worship and venerate the cow, but they are not very kind masters of the cow or any other animal for that matter. He mentions that Indians are not habituated to keeping household pets, nor are they particularly fond of animals and sensitive to their needs. It is in this context that Pandit Nehru makes the above remark. Further, such a remark indicates Nehru's deep understanding of the Indian temperament and psyche. It is also indicative of his boldness and unbiased frame of mind that does not stop short at self-scrutiny or self-analysis. Now let us know about this famous man, the modern architect of independent India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. He is an iconic figure in the realm of Indian English prose writing too, apart from freedom movement. Nehru's writings, particularly his books on glimpses of world history, letters from a father to his daughter, and the autobiography Toward Freedom, shows Nehru's mastery in English prose and depth of ideas, besides highlighting his high world view. His autobiography highlights his preoccupations with nation building, the idea of India as a nation state, his views on India and on being Indian, as well as his personal experiences during and after freedom struggle. But Nehru's achievements as a writer commands equal respect, if not more, as his contribution as a great statesman. His prose style is perhaps among the best in the world, with its innate simplicity, honesty, and eye for evocative detail. Though Nehru did not claim for himself the title of a writer, it is evident from his voluminous writings that he lost no opportunity to write. His writings did full justice to the grace and rhythm of the English language. His powers of observation were commendable, and this is very much in evidence in the prescribed prose piece that we are going to discuss at length, Animals in Prison. Frank Morris, one of his best biographers, writes that at its best, Nehru's style shows a vigor and quality pleasing and compelling to the ear as to the mind. In terms of his writing, he stands together with Mahatma Gandhi and the Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, who were also good writers of prose. Though not a professional writer, Pandit Nehru played a considerable role in shaping the birth and development of English prose in India, leaving behind a legacy for which the world will always hold him in esteem. What is more striking about the style in the present extract, Animals in Prison, is its utter lucidity. Nehru uses a simple, easily understandable language, which is so deftly used as to give a vivid picture of the objects he describes. This unit discusses Nehru's essay, Animals in Prison, an extract from his autobiography, Toward Freedom. Nehru, as you all know, is one of the greatest prose writers India has ever produced. His extraordinary contribution to Indian public life from the days he joined the freedom movement to assuming the most onerous responsibility as the first Prime Minister of the fledgling democracy is recalled by the people of India with great reverence. But the essay under discussion shows Nehru's extraordinary gift as a writer with his mastery over English language and insight into life that includes the world of a good number of animals, birds and insects, especially in Dehradun and Nainital jails, where he had to spend many months as a political prisoner. He comes across as a compassionate observer of the animal behavior, one who shares a bond of affection with the animals. Nehru's style and technique is another important highlight of the discussion in this unit. A few important expressions in the essay have been explained to enable the learners to grasp his ideas. Now, when we look into the essay as a whole, in this present extract, Animals in Prison, he wrote about the various interesting animals and insects that he came across when he was in Dehradun jail. He lived there for 14.5 months, a solid period. So he became very familiar with everything inside and outside his prison. He felt that he was not alone, as many wasps, hornets and lizards too lived there. The cell and its surroundings were intimately associated with the memories and feelings of Nehru. Nehru and other prisoners of different classes were kept in an old lockup inside the cell compounds. The cells there were very small, so the prisoners were allowed to come out of their cells and walk up and down in front of the gate. Nehru considered this as a great privilege, as he could see the fields, a public road and the great Himalayas. The outside walls broke the monotony, boredom and loneliness for Nehru. Most of all, Nehru could see the Himalayas that he loved the most. He felt that comfort as long as he was near the Himalayas. Spring in Dehradun lasted longer than in the plains. In winter, all the trees, including the 4 great peepal trees in front of the gate, shed their leaves. But they began to sprout small green leaves as the air of spring came in. The monsoon rain reduced the summer heat and they were welcomed. But there was too much rain and it was not pleasant to sit confined in a narrow cell, trying to avoid the water dripping from the ceilings or coming through the windows. Having no normal activities, Nehru and other prisoners observed the ways of nature, including the various creepers, creeping, crawling, flying insects. He had to fight with the bed bugs, mosquitoes and flies. Once he had to fight against the wasps, one of which had stung him. But at last he made peace with them. He followed the principle not to interfere with insect wasps and hornets, etc., as long as they did not interfere with him. Nehru had some interesting experiences with squirrels too. When he was in Lucknow jail, this incident happened. The squirrels used to come down from the trees and come very near to him. One day, a squirrel came and sat on his knees. Then, realizing that it was not a tree, it scampered away. When the baby squirrels fell down from the trees, the mothers would come down and take them away running. Once a companion of Nehru reared 3 baby squirrels, feeding them with a fountain pen filler. Dehradun had a variety of birds. Nehru used to listen to the quail or the brain fever bird, repeating its plaintive note day and night, and thus rightly earned its name. In Dehradun, Nehru also watched eagles, kites and wild ducks. While in Bareilly jail, Nehru saw many monkeys and their interesting antics. One day, a baby monkey came down into the barrack compound. It could not go away as it could not climb the wall. Some people tied a string around its neck. The parent monkey saw it and grew angry. One of them, a large monkey, came down charging. The monkey did not fear the large crowd equipped with sticks. Instead, the people fled in fear and the monkey rescued the baby. Nehru quite often encountered scorpions in the prison cells. Once he caught one and put it in a bottle. When he tied it up on the wall, it escaped and not to be found again. 3 or 4 snakes were found in his cells or near them. Once the press got the news that a snake was found in his cell, and that generated some excitement. Nehru liked the digression from the monotony of prison life. Though he feared snake bite, he had no great fright for them. He had repulsion for centipedes rather. Once in Alipore jail, he found a centipede crawling over his feet. He jumped out of his bed in fright, almost dashing against the wall. In Dehradun, Nehru saw a strange animal resembling a crocodile and a lizard both. It was about 2 feet long and it had claws and scales. The forest dweller had twisted it like a knot and he called it as a bow, and he intended to make a curry, bhaji, out of it. Later, Nehru came to know that it was called pangolin. Prisoners, especially the long-term prisoners, suffered emotional starvation in their prisons. For emotional satisfaction, they often keep pets. Nehru saw the convicts kept pets like squirrels, mongoose and cats. Once, a little kitten became friendly with Nehru. He also looked after a deserted bitch and her puppies. Nehru enjoyed the company of more animals in prison than outside. At home, he could not pay much attention to animals as he had to pay attention elsewhere. Indians, as Nehru thought, do not generally like household pets and are generally callous to animals. Nehru wondered how they could be callous to animals in spite of their philosophy of non-violence. During the winters, particularly when it rained, the prisoners were compelled to remain indoors at all times. At such times, Nehru remarks, the man's observation of nature becomes even more acute. Being confined to his cell or prison for long periods, Nehru was made to watch his surroundings more carefully, and it was thus that he discovered various creatures of all shapes and sizes, flying creatures, creeping or crawling, all living together in a mature cohabitation and without disturbing him in any way. Nehru too decided to leave them in peace. So they lived, man and nature, peacefully and in harmony. The only creature to which Nehru took a dislike was the bat. And unfortunately, there were quite a number of bats, big and small, that flew by, nearly touching his face at times. Sometimes Nehru would while away his time matching the numerous colonies of ants that lived in the vicinity. Sometimes he watched the lizards as they darted about the cell in search of prey. He seemed to be particularly fascinated by the squirrels. He mentions particular instances when, misled by his stillness, as he sat reading in his cell, a squirrel would climb onto his knee and settle there for a while, scampering away as soon as it realized with fright that Nehru was a living thing. He also mentions how a fellow inmate had adopted 3 baby squirrels which had to be fed initially with the filler of a fountain pen. All these examples not only show Nehru's interest in nature, but also the great love and compassion that he carried in his heart for all living things, whether they belong to the plant or the animal world. This love and compassion was not a common feature in all men. Nehru goes on to show with specific examples how man's greed tends to disrupt this peaceful coexistence between men and animals or men and plants. Further, he goes on to describe his experiences at Naini prison too. Here, he had the company of a large number of parrots, and he took great pleasure in watching their antics and hearing their crackle. Nehru's observation of birds was not restricted to the Naini jail alone, because in Dehradun too he had the opportunity to see and hear a variety of birds, small ones like the quail and the brain fever birds, also the majestic kite and eagle. Nehru shares a rather humorous experience that he once had in the jail at Bareilly, which had a large number of monkeys all around. He had witnessed several instances of man-animal conflict, of which he cites a particular instance of how a baby monkey was rescued from the clutches of some of Nehru's inmates by another larger monkey. As he himself remarks, not all visitors were welcome, especially the snakes or centipedes were not at all welcome. Nehru seemed to have a special dislike for the centipede. It is not only a dislike, but a sort of a fear of the snake in particular. To his acute discomfort, Nehru had snakes as visitors to his cell at different jails quite a few times. Sometimes such accidental visits also found their way into newspaper headlines, and quite a hue and cry was caused by about such visitations. Not all the animals that Nehru saw during his terms were known to him. Some of them were new, and one such animal which he saw at Dehradun was the pangolin. Nehru describes this strange, rather uncouth animal as a cross between a lizard and a crocodile, but with scales covering its body. It is known as bow in the local dialect. Nehru tells us that the pangolin is eaten by the forest dwellers. Nehru concludes in his writing on animals by a reference to the different animals chosen by different countries as their national animals. He thus refers to the eagle of the USA and German, the lion and the bulldog of England, the fighting cock of France, and the bear of Russia. He remarks that the adoption of these animals could perhaps be responsible for the violent and greedy streak in the citizens of these countries, while the adoption of the meek and docile cow as our national animal could perhaps explain the non-violent and tolerant nature of Indians. This unit acquaints us with the key areas which will make us understand the importance of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, as one of the foremost Indian writers writing in English. Besides, We will also get to know much about Nehru's life, personality, contribution as a statesman and chiefly as a multifaceted personality. His contribution to the field of literature, particularly his essay on animals in prison, is remarkable, as you all have learnt now. This essay, Animals in Prison, reproduced in this unit, it illustrates Nehru's love for nature and his skill as an essayist. So, in this unit, we will straightaway move to the life and works of Jawaharlal Nehru along with an explanation of the prose piece, reference to the context and the Nehru's prose style, which was explained in detail. As you all know that he was the first Prime Minister of India and his life was closely intertwined with the history and destiny of modern India. He, as a lover of children and animals, and therefore in the prescribed essay, he describes a period of solitary confinement in Dehradun jail and narrates his experiences with the different insects, birds, small animals, stray dogs and kittens and so on. As you have now come to an idea about his love for animals, we also see the other side of Nehru's personality as a freedom fighter, nationalist, politician, secularist, lawyer, world statesman, and also popularly known by our younger generation as Chacha, uncle, and patriot are some of the words that are used to describe Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. But his distinction as a writer and as one of the finest practitioners of non-fictional prose in English in India contend with his other achievements in the field of politics and public affairs. So, today we learnt the other side of Nehru's love towards animals. Thank you.